So last week we left off in chapter 12, the first half. And if you remember, let me get focused here. There we go. So we talked about this chart, which was dealing with serial time versus parenthetical time. And then we talked about the woman and Satan being thrown down, the dragon. She was pregnant and she gave birth to a male child. And we know that's Christ from the various references in the Old Testament and New. We know all about the Christ child. I'm pretty sure all of us do. And then we have the description of the beast, and the final beast is going to be a composite of all these empires. And I think I failed to mention that last time, but the important point is that each of the empires, as we go through it, absorbs the culture and the gods and goddesses of the previous one. So in other words, I'll just jump to the Greek. The Greeks had many gods, and you have the Greek gods being absorbed by appropriated by the Romans, and they gave them different names. Like Zeus was the head god, and in the Roman Empire it was Jupiter or Jove sometimes. So the coming world empire is going to have 10 horns and 10 toes, and that's going to be a worldwide empire. None of these previous ones were, but that empire is going to absorb all the others. And one thing about it is all these had a particular mentality, philosophy, if you will, about religion, if that's the term you want to use, and that is that they're all fine. There are many ways to God. So that's why when Paul went to Athens and he saw all these gods, and there was a statue to the unknown God, he used that as a base, a pretext to talk to them about Christ. But it was they would have had a bumper sticker on their car called "Coexist." They were fine no matter. There are many ways to God. All dogs go to heaven. Doesn't matter what you believe. As long love is the only thing. Love, love, love. That was big in the 60s, right? Only Christ never taught love. He said, it's blasphemy. No. What Paul and Christ taught was love with doctrine, with understanding and judgment. In other words, if you have love without the doctrine, the understanding of what your belief system is, then some guy said, I can't remember what some preacher said, a river without banks is a swamp. So the coexist is a swamp. It's just the idea that many gods, we don't care which God you want to believe in. And that's how all these empires were. And that's how it's going to be. In other words, in the final empire of Antichrist, it's going to be whatever you want to believe. We all are going to heaven. All of us are following our own ways. Each man is doing what is right in his own eyes. And we can't judge anybody. If you want to believe in Buddha, that's great. Hinduism, you want to believe in some kind of watered down Christianity, that's fine. Christianity doesn't threaten them. It's people who believe the Bible and are born again. That's the only people that threaten them. There's plenty of liberal denominations in the world today that are ordaining, I won't go into it, people that would have never been ordained before. And they're totally lost. They've totally lost everything, because if you love, and they do it out of love. I don't want to get off too far in this, but love is not enough. You have to have love and you have to have judgment of understanding. So in that sense, you have to judge what's going on around you according to the word, in that sense of judgment. So if you're not following the word and judging things that are coming at you in the world from the word standpoint, then your love is meaningless. So just a little 2 cents about the empires and what they believe. So the final empire is going to be much like all the rest. It's going to be an appropriation of all these conglomerations of various religious beliefs, and every single ism and belief in the world will be put into one. We are one. It's going to be one belief system. which is no belief system. Doesn't matter what you believe. So I mentioned last time about the 10 divisions of the world, whatever they turn out to be, because it's going to be a worldwide empire. And then I mentioned, as we got into the verses of chapter 12, I mentioned that Satan fell and he took a third of the angels with him. And that division is understood to apply to all of the original archangels. In other words, originally in heaven, there were 3 archangels. I know there's some teachings, even Judaism talks about Raphael and these other angels, but we don't know if that's accurate or not. It's not in the Bible. It's not in the Old and New Testament. But there are definitely 3 mentioned, and we have, of course, Gabriel, who's the announcing angel, comes and gives messages. And then we have Michael. I think everybody knows Michael is the warrior angel. Whenever there's a fight, Michael's in it. You know, he's the Rocky of angels. He's always in the fight. It's not much of a fight, by the way. He always wins. Michael has never lost a fight. He's greater than Muhammad Ali. Okay. And and it's implied here, although it's not mentioned, you know, the Gabriel's implied, but right out front, the Lucifer is mentioned. Lucifer, by the way, the original name of the being we call Satan, means light bringer or light bearer. So, or one who shines out light. He's bringing light. So he was the most beautiful one. When he fell, then his name was changed to accuser, adversary, slanderer, and we just call him usually Satan. Beelzebub. You know, there's a lot of names for him. None of them are good, by the way. His new names were not good names. And so we see that 1/3 of the angels fell I shouldn't say fell, were cast to earth. But it's understood that when Lucifer fell and became Satan, that he took his third of his angels. And that is some conjecture, but I think it sounds reasonable. And therefore, if that were the case, and I do believe it, and the angels are arranged much like a military organization, then there were 3 top generals, Gabriel, Lucifer, and Michael. And so Lucifer and his angels fell with him. So it seems from this that, in other words, they're kind of their soldiers. When the general goes someplace, they go with the general. That's the drift of it. You can interpret that as you will. But the thing is that here we're seeing a definite division in the sense of there's 1/3, a definite enumeration of them. We don't know how many. In other words, we can't put a numeric figure on it, but 1/3 of all of them that originally existed and do exist since they're eternal were cast down. And the main emphasis there was that when Lucifer is cast to the earth, which I'm sure is the middle of the tribulation, then at that point, that's when he, and I believe, inhabits the Antichrist, influences him. Next week we're going to talk about him in depth, the Antichrist, false prophet, the beast, and we'll go further into that. But this week I wanted to focus on this particular slide and then finish up the rest of the chapter. So I kind of did a little teaser last week about heaven and hell. May have been over the top, but you know, there is a heaven and there is a hell. But in the Greek, the original, which they would have understood, you know, all of the apostles would have understood. And of course, Paul and the people he went to are all Greeks. They spoke Greek, just like today. If you go anywhere in the world, and I talk, because of the nature of my job, I talk to people all over the place. Talk to Indians all the time, Qataris, UAE, all these people, Europe. I talk to everybody all over the world. And, you know, it's like the only reason we can talk is because I speak English, and they think they do. I mean, some of them are pretty good at it, but the difference is that oftentimes the accent might throw me, but I've learned to interpret the various accents. So, I know somebody in the family, she just left her job, and she was saying that she had a hard time understanding the Indian folks, and I understand that. But it's like any other people group. I talk to Indians that are extremely articulate in British English, and then some of them not so much so. So, people are people, right? You talk to different groups. I talk to South America all the time, Central and South America, and sometimes, we have no problem, and sometimes there's a little difficulty. But what I'm trying to emphasize is English is what they call the lingua franca, which means the common language today. But go back 2,000 years ago, English was not the common language. 2,000 years ago, the Greek was. Remember, on the cross, they nailed a plaque, and that language was in Hebrew because the people in Jerusalem spoke Hebrew. At least they were familiar with it. They heard it in the temple, and they heard it in the synagogue. And they, of course, put their own language. The crucifiers were Latins, and they were Romans, so they put it in Latin. And then, but most importantly, they put it in Greek. Those are the three languages. Why? Because no matter who was out in the crowd, they all spoke Greek, so they could all read it. So all that's to say, in the Greek, there are a number of different words. It's a more precise language most of the time than English or these other languages. And that's because Alexander the Great created it with his generals to be a military language. So he had a problem. He had all these provinces in Greece. And so all of these soldiers came together. And when he gave a command, they didn't understand it because they needed a common language. So they kind of put together a new language called Koine Greek, common Greek. Koine means common. And so it became the lingua franca of the world. And it was more precise in most areas because when you give a military command, you better know what you're commanding, and they better understand you. So it had to be a precise language. So that's just a little background. So that's kind of why we have a lot of different words in the original Greek. Not that you have to know Greek, but it's important to know where these concepts come from. Some of them are obvious in the English. So I'm going to start with everything above the middle horizontal line. Everything above this line is what we would call heaven. Okay, and there's a number of words for heaven, but Paul gives us a distinctive when he says that, a certain man went to the third heaven. So if somebody talks about the third heaven, that is biblical. It's in the Greek, and it is the proper translation. So what is the third heaven? The third heaven is where God dwells. Okay. So the third heaven, personally, I do not believe is in the physical universe. I believe it's in a different dimension. And you say, well, where do you get that from? Well, for one thing, it's eternal and doesn't change. Everything in the cosmos changes. There's no such thing as non-changing cosmos. And the second heaven is cosmos. Carl Sagan had a series years ago, but you'll see that being used as the physical universe. Somebody's an astronomer, a physicist is talking about the cosmos. It's not so much talking about the Earth, talking about what's out there, all the stars, the black holes, the planets, etc. So that's the actual Greek word, cosmos. And it also is interpreted as the world system, but in the more precise scientific term, it's the universe. So we could call it universe. It is the second heaven. So where God dwells, whether it's in this dimension or not, by the way, even if you had the fastest starship in the world, I don't think you would ever get to heaven because it's not here. It's not in this universe. So, for our understanding, God used a lot of terms like up and down, north and south. Doesn't mean that that's exactly what it is. Trying to give us a frame of reference. So if you understand, quantum physics, I don't want to get too far into that, but they've discovered 11 dimensions. They've proven it's CERN collider. And we only are familiar, most of us anyway, with 4 dimensions. And so there is something called space-time. Einstein theorized space-time. We all live in space-time. To make it simple, an object moving in space makes time. Like, is there a clock? No, I guess not. But if there was a clock, right? And the hands are moving. If they weren't moving, there would be no time. I'm assuming it's all working correctly. All that's to say at absolute zero, without getting into too much physics, nothing moves, therefore there's no time. So that's a theoretical construct. I don't know that we have absolute zero, but that's what the physicists say. When no movement is possible, no vibration, no movement, everything is totally still, it just stops, right? So the idea here is that in the simplest form, when we are objects and we're going someplace, we are in time. Objects moving through the space we call time. So but there's additional dimensions and the spiritual dimensions. And this is why people have had a hard time, because all the physics I learned in school was Newtonian physics. So when I went to school back when there were dinosaurs, they taught us Newtonian physics. And Newtonian physics by Sir Isaac Newton, who was a great believer, by the way, and also avid student of Revelation. But he is the one who gave us all the laws, the Newtonian laws. You know, if object in motion will continue in motion until it hits the opposing force, all these laws. But all that is in the four dimensions of the, width, breadth, height, and time. So it's in space-time. But when we get into the additional dimensions, we get into, I believe, the heavenly dimensions. So without getting too deep into it, many of these fellows who are in the CERN Collider project in Switzerland, they of course believe in Buddhism and all other types of things, but they're now saying, oh, these new dimensions give credence to our belief in nirvana and other things. Since they're not Christians, they don't realize that what they've discovered is the potential of heaven. So in heavenly existences. That's why, I digress, but I think that's why Christ could just appear and go through a wall and he's gone, because he's coming from one dimension to a lower. The higher can go lower, but the lower can't go higher. Okay, so that's what the rapture is. How can the lower, that's us, how can the lower go higher, him in heaven? How can we go there? Well, we have to be translated into a new dimension. So it's really like Star Trek. We're going to have an interdimensional transport. It's going to, that fast, twinkling of an eye, take us there. So unfortunately, I hate to dismay you, but we're not going to be flying up there like they show in the pictures. We're going to be here and instantaneously, blink of an eye, we're going to be gone. We're not going to float anywhere. So don't try to jump up and get a head start, because it's not going to work. But that's just, the twinkling of an eye was the smallest increment of time they could discuss back then. They had no chronometers. They had no way of dividing time. But all that's to say there is a heaven. I believe it's in a different dimension. The cosmos we all know about, because I have a cheap little telescope my son gave me, but I can see the moon and I could see stars. I can see the moons around Jupiter. So of course I can go on the net and find out anything I want to know about cosmic objects. And then there's the first heaven, which is the atmosphere of the earth. So usually if on Earth we hear a discussion of the atmosphere is being polluted, the atmosphere has a hole at the North Pole. We all know what that means, right? We're not talking about Mars or Jupiter here. The atmosphere is the first heaven. So Earth's air and gases and stratosphere, all the layers of the Earth, first heaven. Second heaven, the entire cosmos, which is so big it's unfathomable. I don't think anybody could possibly understand it. When the numbers they come up with, it's so far out there, and there's so many galaxies so far out there that if you think you understand it, let me know, because we need to get you some help. Because there's no way a finite being can understand the universe. They can look at very little pieces of it and think they understand. But even in their theories of the cosmos and how it came to be, they revise it, now just about every year, every 10 years. It used to be the Big Bang. Now they're thinking it may be something else and dark matter. Anyway, if you follow that, you realize that science is only precise until the next scientist comes up with something better. Then that's the thing. Okay, so we have the heavenly dimension. So the line across the middle is our divider. Above the line are the heavens, the three heavens. And now we're going to get into the part, looks like it's a little cut off. Sorry about that. Not sure how that happened, but at the bottom we have Tartarus or Tataru in the Greek. So this is where I was talking mainly about. I was talking last week about the heavens versus heaven. But when I said, that hell really doesn't exist in the sense the way we think about it. Hell is a general or global term in the English, but in the Greek, it's Hades, Hades, and usually English people say Hades. And Hades, it simply means underworld. It wasn't something Paul or the New Testament or even the Jews came up with. It was a term understood throughout all the Roman Greek world as the underworld. So in their thinking and in our thinking generally, we talk about what's down under the world. But just to let you think, there was a movie I enjoyed, a sci-fi movie called Journey to the Center of the Earth. And the original one was maybe more palatable as far as, having interesting little ideas about holes down there and things growing. Second one, the more recent one, is probably more accurate, where they have to design a ship so that it can go into the molten innards of the earth. Anyway, all that's to say, no matter what you've heard, as far as I understand, if somebody goes down and you can dig as far as you want to, you're not getting to China. You're going to get to a molten center and you're going to be burnt to a crisp. So where are these places? Where are these underworld things? Are they actually under the world, inside the earth? I don't think so. And I don't think so for a number of reasons. Number one, because in Revelation, he's going to make a new heaven and new earth. So if there's anybody down there and he's making a new heaven and new earth, they're going to be gone. But we know that everybody's eternal. So how could they be down there? But if you believe otherwise, that's fine. But I'm going to give you an understanding of these spiritual places. I say spiritual places because, I don't think no matter how Elon Musk has a drilling machine he's made and drills huge holes in the earth. But I don't think if it could go downward instead of sideways, I don't think it's ever going to come to one of these places, no matter how far they get down there. So if you think that, that's fine. Torments in Abraham's bosom. So there's five places that actually encompass, or we talk about hell. All of these people, when they talk about it, they talk about these are hell. But actually hell, the overall concept, Hades, is 5 different entities, 5 different places. I want to call them spiritual realities. They're spiritual places. And the torments in Abraham's bosom, that comes from the parable Jesus taught. Do you remember the rich man Lazarus? Okay, so, if Jesus said it's good enough for me, so I'm going to go for it. So what we see is torments was a holding place for the unrighteous dead until the judgment. And it still is, by the way. It's inhabited to this day because the judgment has not yet happened. It will not happen until after the 1,000-year millennium, the great white throne judgment. Abraham's bosom is empty now. Abraham's bosom is it's a place where the Old Testament saints went when they died. Okay, just like Lazarus and the rich man. Lazarus went to Abraham's bosom. He was an Old Testament personage. And when he went down there, he went with Abraham and all, Ezekiel, Elijah, all of them were down there, right? But when Christ arose, he took captivity captive, and everybody who was in Abraham's bosom left. Abraham's bosom is now empty. Nobody is in there because these are the Old Testament saints who are resurrected when Christ arose. Nobody goes there anymore because the New Testament people don't go to any of these places. To be absent from the body is to be present with. Okay, so where do people go when they die today, Christians? They go to be with Christ. Where is Christ? Is he down here in hell? No, I don't think so. So he's in heaven. He arose to heaven. Acts chapter 1, in case you missed it. The angels, he's going up. He's coming back the same way. And then we have another concept that Christ introduced, the abuso in Greek. In English, we just say abyss. And there was a movie about that, underwater, where this great giant canyon and cavern went all the way down. So we use that for anything that's bottomless. Seems like there's no end to it, just keeps going down. So the abyss is the area where a division between Abraham's bosom and torments. And then at the bottom of it, it's cut off, but it's Tartarus. Paul's the one that mentions that. And it's the angels who left their first estate, which means in Genesis. In other words, there were angels who were down in the Garden of Eden, and and then, of course, they've been around forever. And then they cohabited with women. That's from Genesis 6. And they created Nephilim. And Nephilim were the giants. So personally, I believe that's where the demons come from. Demons and angels are not the same. And proof of that is Jesus said, when you cast one out, where does it go? Does it go to hell? No, it wanders the earth. They can't go up and they can't go down. Why would they not be able to go up or down? They can't go to heaven, they can't go to hell. Why is that? Because heaven and hell, as we generally talk about it, they're for people. Nephilim are not people. They're hybrids, half angel, half people. God did not create them. Heaven and hell is only for his creation. Nephilim, he did not create. They're an abomination. They are the ones who were destroyed in the flood. So in the flood, they all died, like all the unbelievers. So, but where did they have a spiritual component? They have a spiritual reality. They have a person. So where did that person go? Up or down? Couldn't go up or down because they're not created beings. So what do? They have to stay in the earth. They're wandering the earth. And what is their greatest desire? They used to be giants. They used to have bodies 10, 15 feet high. They're the most powerful beings, that's human-like beings that walk the earth. So where do they desire to go? They no longer have bodies. They're disembodied spirits wandering the earth continually. So what's their main goal? What do they really want? They want to inhabit a body. So what kind of creature do we talk about taking over somebody and possessing somebody? It's demonic. See, that's the demons. The demons are not angels. Fallen angels are in Tartarus at the bottom here. Cut it off, but I think cut it off. But anyway, so they were locked up. The ones who caused this the Nephilim explosion, are locked in Tartarus. They are down there at the very bottom of what we call hell. And the demons, however, are wandering the earth, looking for a body or a person that they may inhabit or influence. So they can't go up and they can't go down. That's my belief from what I've seen. And then we have, oh, by the way, these beings that are locked in Tartarus down there, these fallen angels, they are angels who fell. And also, I should say, all the rest of the angels are free to go wherever. They're good angels, as we call them. They're not locked or restrained in any way. Only the bad angels, Yeah, I mean, what are we going to say? The nasty, evil angels, the ones who disobeyed God and cohabited with women, they're locked up because God wouldn't get to put up with any more of that. And then we have Gehenna. Gehenna, by the way, is never defined as being in the earth or anywhere else. I believe it is, again, in a different dimension because it lasts forever. Gehenna is a reference that Christ used to the city dump of Jerusalem. Okay, that was the name of it. And where it was located was the Valley of Gehenna or Gehenna. And so when he talked to people and he said, that these certain beings are going into the lake of fire or the fiery pit, Gehenna, they understood, at least in Jerusalem understood. I think they all understood because they could smell it and look at it every day. It was the dump, right? I have a dump near my house. We have to drive by it every once in a while, but there's no fiery pit going on. It's just mounds of I call it Mount Trashe. So anyway, but I mean, I love it. It's the only mountain I'm going to get here. So we came from Colorado and I wanted a mountain. I finally got one. I thought God's humor was really great. So one day before the road was even built, I was bicycling back there and I saw, thank you, God, I got a mountain. Boy, you should see this mountain. Anyway, but the Gehenna is the ultimate abode of the evil beings. the first people we're going to see the first beings to go in there are the Antichrist and the false prophet before the 1,000 years. And then at the end of the 1,000 years, all those Satan is going in there and all those that follow him. So I have to say this. This is an important point. Satan and the angels and the demons have never been in hell. There's no reference anywhere that says they've ever been in hell. And it makes sense because ultimately their judgment is going to be thrown in Gehenna, not hell. We, again, in English, you might see somebody referred to as hell, but Gehenna is not hell. It's not Hades. It's not even mentioned as being in the world or under the earth. It is somewhere else. And of course, since it's eternal, it has to be as eternal as heaven, which means it has to be in a different dimension. Because when there's a new heavens and new earth, it's not affected. It's going to go on forever. So I think the closest thing to Gehenna that I've seen is the black hole. There's a movie about that years ago, but not that that's it. But I'm saying the whole idea of a black hole is that a star collapses on itself until it becomes really small, and it has such gravity that everything around it gets pulled in, even light. And so the definition of black hole is not even light can escape from it. Light, in other words, God is light, but there's no light in a black hole. It's total and complete darkness. So what being is representing the total and complete darkness in the world? So it's an analogy at any rate of what Gehenna is. So Gehenna is like a black hole. Yeah, what was that old commercial? Roaches check in, but they don't check out. Okay, so the spiritual roaches are going to be checking into Gehenna, but they're not checking out. So that's how we have our division here. The reason I'm mentioning it at this point in time is because Satan is thrown down to the earth, and we have an idea that he's been in hell, or maybe he visits hell once in a while, but there's nothing in Scripture about Satan visiting hell or the good angels. The good angels had nothing to do down there, and the bad angels are locked up, and so who's left? The demons. They can't get off the earth. So you'll see little movies. A lot of that comes from Dante's play, where he envisioned. He was a philosopher writer who envisioned different levels of hell and all this. The word doesn't have anything about different levels of hell. I mean, if you're in hell, it's as bad as it gets. There's nothing worse than being in hell. It's not like, oh, I think I'll go to the worst hell. No, hell is hell. It's like dead. How dead was he? He was dead. Okay. It's like that. When you're in hell, you're spiritually dead, although you're still living. And there are not degrees of hell. So just don't go there. Save yourself the philosophical argument. Okay. Now we're going to look and finish up here, hopefully quickly, and finish up this chapter. The woman gave birth to the male child who's going to rule all nations with iron rod. That a rod of iron. That is talking about the Lord Jesus Christ, and there are many references to him in the Old Testament, Psalm 2, Isaiah 9, and Revelation, even in chapter 19, when he comes back. It's mentioning him as the absolute ruler. And so the child was caught up to God in his throne. Well, that's Acts chapter 1, right? In Acts chapter 1, the Lord Jesus was caught up from the Mount of Olives. The woman fled into the wilderness, where she was placed, had a place prepared by God, in which she is to be nourished for 1,260 days. Remember that that's the timing of the 1/2 of the tribulation. So you have 42 months, you have 1,260 days, you have a year, years, and half a year, 3.5 years, but they're all the same time. Depends on how God wanted to present it. So the 1,260 days is the very end. It's not the beginning of the tribulation. This is when Satan is cast down to earth, and for the last 3.5 years, he either becomes or he is totally controlling Antichrist. In other words, Satan is being worshipped on earth, which he wanted from the beginning, right? He went to Jesus in the desert and he said, hey, fall down and worship me, and I'm going to give you all the world. It was not an idle promise. Satan owned the world. He could give it to him. Jesus never rebuked him. Oh, you don't own the world. No, he knew he was owner of the world. But he hasn't been worshipped directly. In other words, we have Satanists. We all have all kinds of varieties of kooks and nuts out there. that are ultimately worshiping Satan. But worshiping Satan is, I like the Indiana Jones movie. It's like the old knight is in the cave and they have all the goblets. What do they call that? The chalice. What do they call the chalice? You guys don't remember, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're called, I think he said chalice in the movie, but it's the Holy Grail. And so, and there are many, and they're all diamond encrusted and rubies, and they're all just, what men would want. And that's how the devil does it. He doesn't care what ism or religion or atheism or anything you believe in. They're all those are the goblets. There's only one true goblet. It's plain and simple, and it's in the back. You have to reach for it. You have to know what you're looking for. And so in that movie, the Nazi decided he's going to drink. He picked the gaudiest one he could find, right? And he filled it full of the holy water, and he drank it, and his head blew up. So that's what everybody who follows the world and the isms of the world, their head is going to blow up. That's a promise, okay, from the Word of God. But those who find the simple, true goblet of Christ, they can drink from the holy water of the Holy Spirit, and they will be healed. That's a lesson from that movie. It wasn't made for that purpose, but that's just to say, there's the truth and there's the false. And in this case, God always has a remnant. So you remember, it was Ezekiel that said, I'm the only one left. And then God said, no, I have 7,000 prophets. No, it was Elijah. And I have 7,000 prophets that have not bowed their knee to Baal. And so that's the way it is. He always has a remnant. So these people, I believe, are not all of them necessarily, but mainly Jewish people who are fleeing and they refuse to take the mark, and they're fleeing into a place prepared for them. Many people believe it's Petra, which is a Nabatean city from like 1,000 years before Christ was born in the desert. That's where they filmed Indiana Jones. That movie I just mentioned. That's where they filmed that movie. But at any rate, the city was cut into sandstone by the Arabs, the Nabatean Arabs. But at any rate, it's in Jordan today. So we're going to see that there's going to be a war in heaven. Michael and his angels waging a war with the dragon, and Satan and the fallen angels are in the heaven and earth now, not in hell. Right. So in Job, we see that Satan is going before the throne, and he has access to all three heavens, including the throne. But when he's thrown down, he doesn't have access. That's the whole idea of being thrown down, right? So he's thrown down to earth in the middle of the tribulation in this chapter, and then he no longer can go where he wants to. Anyway, so the good angels were stronger than the bad angels. Remember, they're like cowboy movies, the white hats and the black hats. So the white hats won over the black hats of the evil cowboys. And the great dragon was thrown down. The old serpent, in case you mention it, we see what his name is. And then I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now the salvation, the power, and the kingdom of God and the authority of his Christ have come, for the accuser of our brother has been thrown down, he who accuses them before our God day and night. So that cinches it. I mean, so right then, when he's being thrown down, he's still accusing them day and night. And he mentions that it says, well, that's over. He's not going to do that anymore because he's cast down to the earth. So that's in the middle of the tribulation. So we got 3.5 years left. And they overcame him because of the blood of the Lamb, because of the word of their testimony, and they did not love their life even when faced with death. So this is talking about the martyrs of the tribulation. Obviously, don't take the mark, get your head chopped off. Not a real great prospect. But God is in that. God's grace is sufficient. And they overcame him because of the blood of the Lamb. So in other words, that's something for us to understand. The blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony is our witness. For this reason, rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them, woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has come down to you, having great wrath, and knowing that he has only a short time. So yes, the whole tribulation is wrath, but the last 3.5 years, sometimes called the Great Tribulation, is the greater wrath. But it's all wrath. At the beginning, we have World War III, the Red Horse. That's 2 billion people die. If that's not wrath, I don't know what it is. So there's some kind of variant theories out there about wrath and how to define the book, but it makes no sense to me. So for 3.5 years, the tribulation, that he's going to be controlling the world, and that's his short time. In the Greek, the word means, it's the root of that word, cut, cut or shortened. It's like a carpenter. I think we're probably all familiar. You take a board, what is it? Measure twice, cut once. So it's like it's the same word. It's like a carpenter would use to make a specific cut, so it's at a specific length. So in other words, short time means 3.5 years. So he's upset. He's coming down. He knows he only has 3.5 years. And when the dragon is put down to earth, he persecutes the woman. But the 2 wings of the eagle were given to the woman. Some people think that's representative of America. It's possible, I suppose, that she could fly into the wilderness to her place. So in some way, for times and half a time, 3.5 years, 1,260 days, 42 months, the woman is going to be protected. The woman, meaning by the symbol of the woman with the crown with 12 stars, is going to be protected. That is the emblem and the image of Israel. The serpent poured water out of his mouth. In other words, so the serpent, the dragon, Satan, is trying to kill these folks as they flee. And that area of the world is known for flash floods. But the earth helped the woman and opened its mouth. Well, obviously, that's a supernatural thing. Somehow God opened up the earth. Remember the rebellion of Korah, I think it was, in the Old Testament, where they rebelled, the earth opened up and swallowed them. I think it was like 5,000. So not that that's something wonderful to experience, but it shows us the seriousness of God. So God is going to save the woman. So the takeaway is, the last 3.5 years, Satan comes down. He's controlling, probably inhabiting the Antichrist in some sense. And we have the great tribulation, the greatest of the wrath. And the woman Israel is going to flee into the desert, and it's going to be protected supernaturally by God. And next week, we're going to go to chapter 13, where we talk about the 666, the Antichrist, the false prophet, the beast, the whole bad company. It's called Bad Company. They got a band called Bad Company. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't get any worse. That's just bad. People say, yeah, he was bad. No, these guys are bad. This is the true bad. These guys are really bad. So at any rate, that's where we're going next week.